Big up Alabama Prisoner Profiles, baby. That's how we do. Holding it down in the Alabama deep. Oh, see. All right. Y'all think it's a game? This ain't no game.
See the boys, Alabama Prisoner Profiles. What's going on with y'all, man? Make sure y'all like, subscribe, share the video, comment on the video, donate to the channel's Cash App and PayPal if you feeling generous at Bama Prison Files with 2 S's on the word files, man. Say shout out to our sponsor, PAX Los Angeles. Make sure y'all visit their online website, linked in the description for the gas, edibles, vapes, merch, etc., man. We're gonna give a shout out for T for the 5 and shout out to Jay for the dub on Cash App, man. It's Christmas and the platform appreciates it, man. Real talk. Now, for y'all commenting on my stuff, I'd heard and I've been keeping up with that Lamarck Moore shit on the Dante show. Definitely entertaining, man. You be like, bro, why you know? Hey, man, I'm gonna let them have that, man. You know what I'm saying? I've seen countless times what happens to your channel when you constantly make it about, you know, the bandit-ish, you know what I'm saying? So when my channel does blow up, I want it to be able to get more views on stuff than that, because I've seen it. Bandit, thousands, then you can't get any views on anything else regular shit because that's all your audience wants to see. So, but shout out them, man. Now today, we're going to be getting into this excerpts from these books, man. I found this book, right? And it's called Alabama Bound, 45 Years in a Prison System, right? This book is from the 70s and it chronicles the experience of 3 different staff members ranging from the 1930s all the way up to the 70s with various corrections experience, starting with a retired warden. Let's hop right into that right now. He sat at a metal picnic table under oak trees hung with ever-present moss. Dees, a hulking 6'4" and 280 pounds, straddled the bench with Fred and Jenny, his son and daughter-in-law, sat off to the right in outdoor metal rockers. Cracking and pinching hot roasted peanuts from a tray on the table, Dees, in a soft and polite voice, began to describe his 38 years in the Alabama prison system. He made a point in the beginning to apologize for, quote, talking like a nagger because of his years in the prisons, but he said it with a laugh as if he didn't really mean to apologize at all. This first day, and always, he spoke with great chivalry, with care in his voice of words and expressions. Only in later privacy did it become apparent that he would not discuss conjugal visits or the electric chair in front of females. Those discussions and others took place while driving across acres of the Atmore prison farm or at his home. No matter where Oscar Dees was, there was always a rambling of talk as he reminisced and collected thoughts in time, often with the help of Fred and Jenny. He felt no need for organization or to relate one matter to another. Quote, they done away with the strap and decided they would use some other method of discipline. So they got to burning up the cotton mill. Every night at Kilby, they'd set the cotton mill on fire. I was at Katona that time running a road camp, and they sent after me, and the governor called me out there and says, we got to stop this mill being burned up by inmates. It's costing us too much money. We can't afford to have it. They hadn't mentioned anything about any other kind of discipline, so I went home and got me some hose pipe, carried it down there to solitary confinement to where I could use it. I went to the dining room that evening, that shift, went to work about 3 o'clock, and they was doing the burning up of the mill. I got up on the stage in the dining room and told them that I didn't want them burning up the mill to cost them anymore. I was going to furnish the matches. All I wanted them to do was furnish the heads and whatever it took to go with it. That they wasn't going to burn that cotton mill up no more. So I says, Now, I'm going to punish every prisoner if he comes out that mill until I get the right one tonight if you set it on fire. So they went out to the mill. That hasn't been burned up no more since then. Discipline, enforced by punishment or the threat of it, was Oscar Dees' code. You didn't have to agree with him, but he convinced you that he believed in what he said. To his prisoners, Dees must have personified the fear of God. Prisoners and guards alike called him Big O, Big D, and Big Diesel. He once said, quote, "It all boils down to this point. Where you got discipline, you got control. That goes for homes, churches, towns, or whatever you wanted. If you hadn't got any discipline, you hadn't got anything." He suggested that Atmore prison officials today should use the Bible as a guide. Quote, "Use the rod. Don't spare the rod," Dees advised. "It don't say anything about the strap," Jenny answered. "It don't say nothing about no strap, but it says something about that rod," Dees replied. "And that rod can be used as a strap or an oak limb or whatever you want to call it." In Dees' view, punishment is one way of, quote, "getting a man's attention." "Did you get Fred's attention when he was young?" Jenny asked. "Many," Fred offered. "One time," corrected Dees. "Many times," Fred insisted, jokingly and without elaboration. Oscar Dees retired in 1969 to a tidy 2-bedroom home he had built on a 3-acre parcel just 10 miles from the town of Atmore. He lives there with his wife, who works at a downtown drugstore. They affectionately call each other George. The land around their house is flat with an occasional roll. During the spring and humid summer, it's kept a lush green by cooling showers. An inviting land, it's the kind on which even an amateur can be confident that something will grow from seed. Years earlier, Dees, a former farmer before a warden, plants part of his land in corn, and he usually raises 2 or 3 calves to be sold at local auction. But it's more a hobby than a means of income, because he says there isn't much money in it. It was here, in the comfort of his land, seen from the enclosed patio of his home, that he spoke his mind the most freely, not limiting his views to the Alabama prison system, but entwining them with politics upon politics, the press, the state of the nation, and the pride in his Atmore friends. When he spoke of his past, he did so in consistently even tones. But when he talked to politics or the press, he was vehement. "So I'm going to tell you right now," Oscar Dees said, "the trouble with our country today, with the penitentiary system and most everything else, is our press. Our press is just as one-sided as it can be." "And on the other hand," Fred Dees continued, "we're the cause of that because we don't let the press know what's really going on. We used to be an open book. They could walk in, look at the records, and see who got punished. But you wouldn't let them inside the actual penitentiary because the doghouse was used. I let the judge and the solicitor both out of Mobile go one time, but just us." "But you wouldn't let the press go?" "No, I wouldn't let the press go. So he had to imagine what was going on." "Well, he wouldn't tell the truth if he did know what was going on." And the elder laughed loud and long, and nothing more was said about it. On rides into town, Oscar Dees greeted friends with warm enthusiasm, and they responded to his jovial mood. "Hello, Scotty. Let's go fishing, boy." "You better get over," Scotty yelled back. Yeah, they're eating it up." He feels very much a part of his small agricultural community. As he drives around town, he talks of his civic work, of being a member of local water district board, of being a Shriner and a church-attending Baptist. His heritage is in this county. He was born here, and as a boy he farmed here, began his prison career here, and returned to retire here. "When they hired me to go work for the state in 1931, I was plowing a mule out the end of the road and turned upside the fence. The warden was sitting there in an old Ford. Asked me did I want to come and go work for the state. Of course I knew the warden personally. He used to be sheriff here. I drove right up to the fence. He said, 'Big one, you want a job with the state?' I says, 'Mr. Fountain, I don't know nothing about no prisons. I don't know whether I want a job up there or not. I don't know whether Mama will want me to go up in there now,' he says. 'Well, you're an orphan boy. You can make more if they're supporting your mom and sister than you can here farming. You go talk to your mom and tell her you can make an easier living up there than you can trying to make on this farm. You tell her I'll take care of you, unquote. I wasn't but 23 years old. Daddy left us 22 acres of land. That's what we worked and made a living on. There was 2 boys. I was the oldest. I'm the oldest one in the bunch. There was 5 of us. Warden Fountain says, I know you wouldn't do nothing till you talked it over with Mama. You talk it over with her and tell her what I said, that I'd look out for you and give you a job Monday morning if you want to come up there. You tell her I'll take care of you because I'd sure love to have you. I went home, talked to Mama about it. Mama told me, you can go up there and try it. I was married then, and I believe I lived with Mama. That was on Thursday, and I went up there on Monday morning and went to work, and then I worked there 38 years. I started at Atmore, the old Atmore. That's the only prison they had there then. After I left the farm, my brother worked it, and we got along better after I went to work for the state, because naturally it was hard trying to make a living then. That was during the Depression, see, so it was rough. First job I had was carrying the work squad out there. They gave me 6 buckshot shells and a double-barrel shotgun and a trustee to tote some water and wait on me. I wasn't supposed to let him come up to me, the deputy warden says. Don't let him get no closer than the barrel of that shotgun, boy. When I went to work for them, they put the prisoners in the field. In other words, we checked out between daylight and sunup. They sent our food to us in containers out in the field. We stopped an hour to eat dinner right where we was working. Then we went right back to work. Then we checked in between sundown and dark. Prisoners were so tired whenever night would come, we didn't have any trouble with this homosexual child stuff and all that sort because they was too tired. In other words, we had the okay. We okayed twice a day, every night and every morning. That was the count. We called them out and lined them up, and we had a platform that was at the foot of the bed for them to sit on to keep them from messing the bed up. And they'd be sitting on that platform and be so tired they'd lay back on the floor. We could count them by then land, but to show that work means more than just one thing, work will take care of a whole lot of your discipline. If you got a tired man, he's not going to give you near as much trouble if you got a man that's sitting around and not tired, storing up some kind of meanness to get into. I really needed the job because that was during the Depression. Like I said, they started me off at $72 a month, and I worked 7 days a week from daylight till dark. Then I drove 10 miles back to the tire. I done that for a year before I moved up. I worked at that prison up there 12 years. Then I was gone 9 years. No, I was gone nearly 19 years because I stayed at Katona where I was warden 9 years, and I stayed at Kilby 9 years. I was deputy warden at Kilby. Then I come back to Atmore and finished up at Atmore. 38 years. That included the time I was a jail inspector. Of course, there's another year I was suspended, but I'll get into that. I've had a whole lot of experience. They're going through the same thing over at the prison now that I went through. With this experience, I was carrying a plow squad at the time, and we had mules. That's a cultivating squad that cultivated the farm. We had mules, so I had went to the shop. We had to change a different plow on the stock to plow something. So while the prisoners was getting ready to plow whatever it was I was going to plow, farm whatever it was I was going to farm, the deputy warden comes by and says, "Come on, let's go over to Camp 9. They had hired a man from Georgia that was going to make them rich on tomatoes. He was a fella big as me. We didn't have but one tractor. A great big red nagger was driving it. We drove over there, and that nagger was standing by the tractor. That deputy warden asked him, says, "Red, where's the tomato man?" He says, "He's going to camp, Captain." Deputy warden says, "What you think about that tomato man?" He says, "Well, Captain, a man don't know, he just don't know. That's what I think about him." Well, you know, that's in everyday life. A man don't know, he just don't know. That's what's wrong today. They got folks on the job that just don't know. Good folks is one thing, and prison people is another thing. I fully believe the Lord made us all. He made us all for different types of work. If we all was made for the same kind of work, we'd be all cutting the same kind of work. I think there's prison men, law enforcement men, preachers, doctors, judges, bankers, whatever you have. And if you're cut out to fill one of them positions, you can do it. If not, you're just like a wheel that got a cog broke out of it. I don't think they can hire good sheriffs, good policemen, good majors, good captains that's made a marvelous record in their work, but put them in a prison system. They just as lost as a man that's in an airplane that ain't never flew no airplane. There's all the difference in the work. There's no comparison in the work of a law enforcement man and a prison man. I had a brother-in-law that went up there to work at that boy. Him and another fella, they had a whole bunch of men supposed to be cripples. Just crippled prisoners. They went over there to fix a bridge across a little old ditch. One of them had a gun, the other one didn't have a gun, so an old cripple boy they thought there wasn't be a bit of harm in the world took that gun from the officer and took a truck. Took both guards and all the prisoners and carried him to Florida, the whole work crew. Of course, that goes back to guards. That goes back to what I said a while ago. If a man is cut out to be a guard, it don't take very much to show him how to guard prisoners. If he's not cut out to handle labor and not cut out to handle prisoners, then all the teaching and all the money you want to spend on him is not going to make a prison man out of him. Just give me a man with good common sense and a man that you can talk to. That's the man that'll make the best prison guard. One of the first things they warned me about was what they call putting a hat on a man. That means a con man. They got some professional con men in the penitentiary. They can make it so plain, tell you so plain, make you believe they've never done anything wrong, that they went to Sunday school every Sunday and was raised in the church. The only time he was at home was just to eat. The rest of the time he was in church. In fact, they arrested him in church and he ain't guilty of a thing in the world, and they just railroaded him in that there courtroom. That's what you call putting a hat on a man. And never let a man tell you that they can't put that hat on him, because they'll put that hat on him. Every convict, when he first gets in the penitentiary, he gets religion. He gets the Bible, and he'll tote that Bible literally. He'll tote it, read it until the day you call upon him to discharge him and tell him to get his personal property. Then he'll leave the Bible sitting right there on the ground. If you check his personal property and ask him, hey, say Joe or John or whatever his name is, where's your Bible? You've been so faithful since you've been in the penitentiary with the Bible. Why are you leaving it? He leaves it there and don't carry it with him. And then when he comes back, he'll pick that same Bible up too. If they've changed Warden or changed any of the officials, he'll pick that same Bible up and he'll use that same Bible and he'll put that hat on somebody else. I was told about that hat deal. So if they didn't make him a trustee, then as far as I was concerned, he was under the damn gun. Now, I've had them come to me with all sort of stuff. Go out to work and he'd say, hey there, Captain, I have spells, I have epilepsy. And I starts running when I have an epileptic shock. Would you shoot me if I have an epileptic shock? Started running, boss. I said, you better run around me if you don't want me to shoot you. If you start off running, I'm gonna shoot you. So I broke up that epileptic shit. Of course, I've had them some kind of fits, but they just fall over and have them fits. And we get them in the shade, pour some water on them, and take care of them. I had one up there at Katona that they sent everywhere else, and he would throw a fit, and he could fool the doctors, and he fooled the doctors for a long time. They really thought he had a fit, so they sent him to me. First day I sent him out on the job, and he fell out. He didn't fall off the truck was stopped, he got down off the truck, didn't hurt himself, and had him a fit, slobbering at the mouth, all that sort of stuff. Well, they brought him in, told me we had a prisoner that had a fit. I had a doctor look at him. The doctor said he couldn't find nothing wrong with him. So I sent him out the next day and he had another fit. I called Montgomery and said, hey, we got a prisoner up here that has fits. I couldn't remember when that was. They told me to bring him to Montgomery. I carried him 100 miles to Montgomery and they said he made it up. The warden did it Montgomery. He'd have a fit whenever he came into the office. They done found out down there he was faking it, but I didn't know it. So the warden told him and made a motion for him to have a fit. He fell over, began to puke and raise hell. I told him to wrap it up. I'll take him back to the prison right now, and we left. I says to him, now you didn't have your last fit unless somebody asked you to have one. 'Cause I'm gonna have one, and it ain't gonna be good for both of us to have a fit at the same time. I didn't have no more trouble out of that prisoner the rest of his days. I guarded plow stands and later on a field squad. That was when the warden at Ashmore asked me to train the dogs. They had a dog warden from Monroe County who didn't know much about dogs. I didn't know much about dogs either, just fox dogs and rabbit dogs and things like that. This fella was a sheriff. He had come down for the dog job, and was bad to run after women. One evening, the warden was looking for him and couldn't find him, so they took him off that job. I had never thought about running dogs. The warden calls me in and says, "Dees, I want you to take these dogs and run them. You know this county and everybody knows you. I want you to take them and run them." Well, I took the dogs, who were sure as shit set in their ways. The other fella had treated a prisoner in the same place, and training them, he had crossed the creek at the same place. He had run to the same tree and treed over there at the Indian reservation. So when the dogs would get pretty close to that tree, they'd just leave the track and go to the tree. Same way where he crossed the creek. They just go pretty close to where he crossed the creek with them, so much they just leave the track and go across the creek. Well, I had to break them of that. So I went to work with them. I told the warden I'd take the job if he wanted me, I'd take it. I went to working and training them. I got my own ideas about how to train them where I could track a man. If the dogs couldn't track them, I could track them. Like he'd come across an oak grove, I could track him by the leaves or something he put on or rubbed his feet on or something like that. I could keep the dogs on the right track. I'd done that to where I could depend on the dogs running without me. I worked with them a year before I got them running where I could really depend on them. One had a bloodhound and redbone mix, about half and half. A bloodhound is too slow and don't bark much. A redbone barks good and he trees good and he'll bite you too. That old bloodhound won't bite you much. Some of them dogs will bite, some of them will bite you. I had some that would really bite you. Then I had some that was good tree dogs. Then I had some dogs that wouldn't bite you, wouldn't bark at a man up a tree either. I bred and raised all my own dogs. I used a thoroughbred male bloodhound with a redbone female. I usually had about 35, and one generally had enough dogs trained that if a bunch of men was to run and some more would run thinking maybe that I didn't have enough to get them, I always had enough that I could be running 3 or 4 bunches of men at the same time. You train your puppies by dropping a switch. When you cross the road like that, there you drop that switch across the road where I could track it myself. If the dogs got off on somebody else's track, it's different from running a man and running a fox or a rabbit or something like that. But you got to run the right man, see? There'll be some more men tracks down there, but the dogs got to stay on the right one. I'd have a trustee drop something along his track where I could track it, and if the dog got off on another man's track, I'd make him come back and get on that one. And that would teach him not to get off on another man's track and to stay on the same track. But you've got to have a reasonable place for a dog to get familiar with the scent of that track, or he can take it through other tracks. 'Cause some folks think that he can just smell off a handkerchief or something like that. Ain't no such dog as that. That's movie shit. If I had a prisoner that was running away and the dog boy crossed, if he thought maybe I had got lost from him, the dog boy is another prisoner running along behind the dog, staying up with him on his feet. He'd drop a branch in the road, pointing the way that he was going. If I was to get behind and come along and run into it, I'd know he crossed that road and gone in that direction. And then if I was running a sham race, and if the prisoners didn't run enough to keep the dogs trained, I'd run them 3-4 times a week. I let the prisoners that was training the dogs put on a sham race, dropping a branch in the road, so when I crossed the road, I'd know that he was on the right track. So in other words, you had to check your dogs just like you was checking anything else to see if you was right. I used trustees. The trustees would put out the race, and I'd run the trustees. The dogs would go after them. I'd take them and put them on his track. Sometimes the scent would be old. I'd have to put him on the track for about 2 miles and pick the boy up and let him go to a certain tree, and I'd let him track him. Next to the dog yards is where I live. I ran the dogs for 9 years. I lived over there 9 years. Many times when I was running an escaped prisoner, there would be 2 of us on horseback, me and another prisoner. He was the most trusted convict. There was 2 prisoners with a dog apiece on a line. Those were the ones coming up behind. That's 'cause they wouldn't run as fast as the dogs that was loose. We run 1 prisoner, a dog boy, to run that prisoner till I run that horse to death. That horse died the first 20 minutes. That race was so fast, the dogs would make a loop and give a horse the chance to catch his breath, but that dog boy just took a beeline. He knew where his home was, you know. He took a beeline towards his home, and the dogs didn't make a bobble. They just went right on till they run that horse. It got so hot, that prisoner stayed away from water too. I run that prisoner till I run the horse to death. Then the prisoner got a ride from somebody. Hired somebody to carry him home, and I knew where he lived. So I knew where his sister lived, and I knew where his mother lived too. Over there on the river. So we run him to where a fella said he picked him up and took him home. So I went to his sister's house first. She told me, says, Mr. Dees, he's gone over to Mama's. And says, now I'll go over there and go in the house first so you won't have to shoot him if he runs out. I said, I won't shoot him. I said, I'll go the back door, I'll go the back door, and if he comes out the back door, I'll just catch him. And I says, you go in the front, and this man here, another free man, Mr. Lorman, he'll go the front door with you, and I'll go the back door. And he had been there, him and another prisoner. They had been there, and the mother had given them some quilts and things to sleep. And they went from there way back in the river swamp to an old house that was back there nobody lived in. His sister told us that she'd go to show us where they were at, which was about 2 miles we had to walk through the woods, through the water and everything else. She went with us over to the house and called him and told him, says, Mr. Dees is out here. He wants to carry you back to the prison. Now get up and get your stuff and come on out. So he got up and got his quilts and all and come on out. Him, the other prisoner. So we went on back to the house to his mother's, and she was sitting on the front porch, and she fainted when we walked up. So he asked me if we could go in there where his mama was, and I told him, yeah, I'll let him go on in there like he was a trustee. In other words, I turned his ass loose again. That goes to show you, if you treat one fair, if he's got any man in him at all, he's running. Of course, the boy that shot me, that's just a whole lot of them over there like that. You could give them a chicken, cake, 3 times a day, and they tote a Bible under their arm till they wore it out, and all that sort of stuff. They get parole. Just in time they got out, they throw the Bible away and do something else and come on back and pick that same Bible up. If they change wardens, they'll go to trying to put that same hat on them. So that's what you have to go up against. One night, right here, I ran across 3 prisoners. Caught one of them used to be a house set right there. Caught one of them right out there. Brought him up and gave him to a man that lived in this house. Run another right up yonder and caught him in a barn, and another one got away. About a week or 2 after the one that got away, they were trying to hide the trees. They run across on foot about 15 miles from here to Atmore Prison, right through these woods right here. Another time I ran a prisoner down this paved road, right straight into Atmore, and they told me I was crazy. I had one dog that was running because I was afraid cars would kill him, so I had it running right ahead of me. When the prisoner would meet a car with the lights, he'd get out and lay down in the ditch. She'd get to where if he run out and lay down in the ditch, she'd go out there to where he laid down and bring him back into the road and go on down the road. And I run him right into Atmore and got him in the depot down where we caught him. And I run him right back by the prison on the way into town. He come back right by the prison. I ran him up above the prison about a mile, and it got dark. Then come right back down by the prison again and double back, trying to throw me off. And he would have thrown me off because everybody thought I was crazy for following that dog. They told me, says, you crazy. So I followed that dog and I caught him. There was another that robbed a man in Mississippi. He come over in Alabama and robbed a man, kidnapped him, then come home to Alabama and turned him loose. Then he robbed a man in Alabama, kidnap him, and take him back to Mississippi. So I stayed down in Mobile a week with the dogs. Didn't do anything while I was in Mobile because they had in the paper, and he said he wouldn't be taken alive. When I come back to Atmore, and it was in the paper I had come back to Atmore, the next day he robbed another man in Alabama and carried him back to Mississippi. So late that evening they run into him. Some kids did, parked in the roadway off in the woods, and they seen he was asleep. So they went back and told they folks about it, and they called the law up there, and when they got in there on him, he jumped out the car and ran and dropped his gun. But he had his belt full of cartridges. So they called me. I got down there. That happened about 4 o'clock in the evening. I got down there about 10. Put the dogs on the track and run him all night up to about 9 o'clock the next morning. Run him in the house and caught him. I said, what would you have done if you'd had that gun? I had a machine gun, he says. I'd have made you melt the barrel off that. They sent him to the penitentiary for 25 years, I believe. He went to federal prison. He just gave up whenever he seen me. I run one night from the prison in Frisco City, which is 22 miles on foot, and I lost him. Come back to the prison, and just about the time I get back, they called, said he went to a house and wanted some matches. I went back up there, got after him again, and I run him all day till 3 o'clock that evening. And I got so tired till the edge straddled a fence, and I couldn't get my legs over it. So I told Deputy Warden that we'd never catch him. I'd see some people that would tell me he's about an hour ahead of you, about an hour ahead of you, about an hour ahead of you. I couldn't gain on him, and he couldn't gain on me, of course. I was running that dog on that line because I was in a county where I was afraid I'd get some dogs killed if I turned them loose. So I told the deputy warden to call the prison on the radio and tell him to bring me some more dogs and a horse, and I could catch the man in a few minutes. So they brought me a horse and some more dogs, and I dropped him, caught him in about 30 minutes. I run that prisoner at least 40 miles. Most of it was on feet. That was back, about 38, 39, somewhere back there. Oh yeah, I've lost him. I have lost him. Folks would pick him up on the road, but they don't pick him up as much as you think. In other words, they wouldn't pick up as many prisoners then as they will now. Because now you can't tell a prisoner from the free people. At that time, trustees wore white clothes and linemen wore stripes up and down their leg. They finally got where they put white clothes on all of them, see? But now they wear these here $25 Navy slacks up there. Yes, you can't tell a prisoner now from a free man. In other words, the guards has got on a uniform now and the prisoners has got on street clothes. That's how much change has been made. They put the guard in a uniform and put street clothes on the convict. They said somebody give them to them, but it still don't make no difference if some manufacturer did give it to them. The prisoners didn't have no business with them. They need to be in a uniform where the public can tell whether he's a prisoner or not, and they ought to have numbers on them clothes big enough to show that they're prisoners. Your sentence didn't have a thing in the world to do with the penalty for escape. There was a boy that left Atmore that I went to school with that just had half a day to serve. He was a carpenter. He was the kind of prisoner we called a county prisoner. He was in there for a misdemeanor over here in Atmore. He thought he had a hold on him, so he was out in the carpenter squad and walked off. He had made his time, all but a half day, and he left and was gone for about 6 months. And one day at 12 o'clock, he come walking back. Come walking up, and I was at the front gate, and he says, "Captain Dees, I want to check back in and make that half a day. I found out I don't have no holdover." So we checked him out the next day, and he worked that half a day. Next morning, we turned him loose. At that time, he had made his time. They'd either punish him by the strap, or, well, that was mostly what they'd use was the strap back then. A holdover is where a man is in the penitentiary and another charge has come up that they thought he was guilty of. And when he finishes that sentence, instead of him getting out, he has to go back to the county jail and be tried again. I was against adding another sentence for escaping. If a man's got 25 or 35 or 40 years, what do he care about another year and a day for running? If he gets away, he's got all to gain and nothing to lose. If he gets away, okay. If they give him another year, it's still okay. He's got more time than he can make anyhow. So I didn't like that. And another thing I didn't like was to put that much burden on the taxpayers. To have to go through court, give that fella more time, and take up time of the courts and all that when there's no use to it. What'd you do after training the dogs? Well, I got shot. And there y'all have it, man. That's gonna do it for part one. Like I said, man, this book is long, and judging from y'all's response and the views is gonna determine how much more of this y'all get, because I low-key had to go through some stuff to be able to find the book, and whoop-de-man. But yeah, man, let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. Seems like you had to be a man back then on both sides of the fence, man. The strap, what the hell? I'm gonna have to look that up. That sounds like just something to beat inmates with, man. Warden, a tasteful dislike for inmates, right? And people of color, right? Typical back then. You see that, right? Bro was a fucking farmer. No law enforcement, none of that. And would happen to be 6'4", and that type of I'm buff from working a tough ass job type shit. Warden said, you want a job? Got him a job, man. But yeah, man, y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. I'm sorry if I stumbled through all that. It was about 20 pages of that I was reciting. And keeping up that accent for that long can be daunting. But yeah, man, like, sub, share, donate to the channel's Cash App and PayPal platform if you're feeling generous. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving holiday, man. DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles, out the game.